So without much more ado, let's come to a seated position. And you can sit like in Sukhasana, easy pose, or sit in full lotus, or if neither of those work, sit however you want. And we're just going to Om in. So with, nothing special, our Oms sometimes sound beautiful and angelic, and sometimes they sound weird. And we want the bravery to just go with whichever version comes today. So hands to heart center, close your eyes, root down, lift up. And with your eyes closed, you can take a moment to dedicate your class to someone who needs some healing or some love, remembering that this part of us isn't finite, so we lose nothing by dedicating our class. And then empty your breath. Take a deep inhale. And open your eyes, relax your arms. And we're going to start by coming into the yin version of Janusharasana. So you're going to bring your right heel to your groin. You're going to stretch your left leg out. And we just take a couple of turns. I like to lift my elbows because I like ska. All right. And then just bow over your beautiful left leg, letting your head drop. Sometimes you might find that you want to bolster on your leg so that you can rest and relax into it more. Pillows, small pets, anything that doesn't wriggle too much works. Take a full inhale, and with your exhale, see if you can soften a little bit down towards your knee. You can relax your hands on your leg if that's more comfortable. And just remind yourself the principles of how we come into a yin pose. So you've done the first part, you found the right shape for your body. And then allow your whole body to soften, let your bones be heavy. Maybe notice if your tongue is relaxed or your jaw is relaxed. And then feel in your body even, on a very gut level, that you're willing to stay. You're willing to stay through being bored or uncomfortable, annoyed, irritated, excited, all of these wonderful things that can happen in our yoga practice. But you don't want to stay through sharp pain. It's not a practice of masochism. It's this practice of actually bravely going to the edge of where you're at right now, today, in this moment. So we're doing a series for the heart and the lungs. And the heart is the yin organ that couples together with the small intestines, the yang organ. And the lungs, as the yin organ, couple together with the large intestines. And while all of those organs affect our body physically, in the matter of our body, it's the yin organs that affect us more deeply throughout all the layers of our bodies. So our physical body, our emotional body, our mental body, our spirit body, and of course the energetic body. I knew there was one missing. Notice if there's a place where you can soften and drop deeper into the pose. So sometimes we do the heart and small intestines separately from the lungs and large intestines, but never actually is that true, because even if I'm just talking about one of the themes, we know that our body is a dynamic system and we can't change anything without affecting everything. Now, with your next inhale, roll up and take your right hand and put it behind your hip and just lift up and stretch your whole left side of your body. You can use some sound effects too if you want here. Take a big full inhale and side out. And then bring your hips down and switch your legs. Now, if you're over 10, you might notice that one side of your body doesn't always act like the other side. So make the adjustments you need. Elbows high for a little ska moment. And twist your belly button over your beautiful right leg, taking your pillows or your bolster with you, and then bow over your right leg, letting your head drop. Allow yourself to notice the small little things you need to adjust. And then see that you can intentionally get even softer here. You might notice we're not very well practiced at getting softer. We're always busy getting like, yes, more tight, more engaged, more constricted. So maybe sighing out your breath, making a little, most of you are alone in your room, grunting noises. Or like dramatic sighs can help us just drop down a little bit more and soften a little bit more. And then find that willingness to stay. So today, the reason I was inspired to do the heart and the lungs right in front together is, on the physical level, if you were to open up the body, like it's not like the heart is separate from the lungs. The lungs is kind of like all around the heart. There is this beautiful relationship that with our lungs, it is the part of our body it's the tender organ. It's the most sensitive part. We can't survive without air more than a couple of minutes. But it's also this entryway into actually having a say in how our body is reacting. So we've all, well, I'm assuming we've all had the experience where we've been pissed off and someone's like, oh, just take a deep breath. And how annoying it is, because we know that will change us, and we often are attached to our anger or our reaction in the middle of it. But that we can take deep breaths and it affects our whole body because it affects our heart. So there it's so beautiful that so much of our body works without our awareness. Without us, we don't have to think about the Krebs cycle. It just happens. We don't have to think about, any of our cycles. They happen. But in the organ of our lungs, bringing intention and will to these measured breaths, whether it's pranayama or just reminding yourself to breathe deeply, to feel something. It is the quickest and most immediate way that we can actually allow our consciousness and our will to directly affect every cell in our body. And then inhale, start to roll up. And this time you're going to put your left hand behind you, maybe a little drama. Oh, woe is me. You might have your own line. Stretch out the whole right side body here. And then bring your hips back down into the ground. And we're coming into Seisa pose, sometimes referred to as Japanese pose. This one even says geisha pose, which could be a whole class in of itself. So you're sitting on your heels. And it's not a very immediate dramatic pose. So place your hands on your knees, close your eyes, feel that you can have just subtle, a little push with your hands to help your chest lift up. And then we're still in this in a yin way. So how can you employ enough yang to stay in this pose, but still honor this yin? So your eyes are closed. Even without your attention, you're breathing. But you might just notice you want to slow down your breath or deepen your breath, noticing how it feels in your body right now. Now, breathing is the most direct way that we affect our physical body. But with the same anatomy, basically, what's really dramatic breathing? It's talking or singing. And so for me, there is this immediate gateway there where just like our breath affects our physical body, we want to wake ourselves up to how much our words affect our whole being as well as our physical body. And as you breathe, when you bring your attention to your breath, you may even notice that you have thoughts going on. And sometimes it feels like they're thoughts that happen to us. But sometimes you can also say things on purpose to yourself in this dark interior of our private inner life. And while the technicalities are a little bit different, nobody else is hearing your words, you're not making as dramatic movements with your mouth, even in your own articulation silently, these words still affect our very being, our very body. Now you might be able to keep your eyes closed. Just rock forward onto your knees and tuck your toes under and sit back into a now more dramatic geisha pose. Let your heart lift up, let your shoulders drop down. Now, I did mention that we're not doing this like masochistic thing. So for you, you might notice like, no, I can't hang out here for 20 minutes. None of us are actually going to take that long. But it might be too sharp. Then just come out of it, sitting back to where we were. A very nice way to do that is also using a bolster behind your knees. You can use a rolled up yoga mat, but then it like massages your calves in a very intense way. All right. And then come forward with your hands, stretch your feet out, and just start to slap out your feet on the ground. Woo! And then rock your weight back so you're lifting up your knees, stretching the tops of your feet. And then we're going to come into frog pose. So frog's always a delicacy, even in yoga. You want to have your heels lined up behind your knees, and your knees are lined up with your hips. You take your knees as far apart as you can. I'm trying to figure out a good way to show this without just going off camera. So wherever your knees go, as far apart as they can, keeping your hips and your knees lined up in one line. Come down to your elbows. You can use a bolster or a pillow again here if you'd like, or you may have the flexibility to just lay all the way down. Now, if you're quite flexible, you can also work on tucking your tail a little bit, like adding a little bit of yang here. But if you know you're not flexible and it's not an issue, don't even pay attention to that. So most importantly, let your head hang, and you get direct feedback. So every exhale, it feels a little bit more intense. It's dramatically stretching your groin area especially. You can do a light, like engaging of your pelvic floor, engaging your root lock. And remember, the intensity of it, it's not clenching. It's this light, like the old texts describe it as the same effort it would take to close the petals of a flower. So make friends with your frog pose. Allow your breath to maybe slow, deepen, and you can even send your breath to where it's most intense in your body. So one of the biggest handicaps I feel like a lot of people have reached, they weren't born with it, but developed in this lifetime, is that out of maybe reasons of like seeking safety or avoiding trauma or in a way not to reawaken trauma even, we've taken this motion of somehow divorcing our word from our heart, or divorcing our thoughts from our feelings. And so as we re-embody and work through yoga at self-realization, we want to bring these two hemispheres back into relationship. That every word we speak has this power to change us. And also the power, just like our word affects us, our words can affect other people so very deeply, beyond reason. And while hundreds of years ago, you may have had, the human being really was at a different evolutionary point where words might not have been as, was it, um, the saying just went right out of my head. Sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never hurt you. I mean, we in these generations, and this time we know how wrong that is. I mean, in our own biographies, which words have, you know, struck us like a sword, or what words have become metastasized over time, or repeated, and repeated, re-wounding again and again in a way that that stick or stone doesn't. And I think part of this mystery is we're still holding on and wishing that our words weren't as strong as sticks and stones, while knowing and experiencing just how much they can be. They can be used as a weapon, or they can be used as a tool of healing. And some of the work that we get to do in our private interior is actually changing our own language. I couldn't believe it when I realized one day that, like, whenever I screwed something up, I actually would say, like, the insult my mom used to say to me when she was really mad. I took it up and, like a beacon, I carried it around and used it whenever I needed it. We want to notice what we repeat all the time. That wounds our egos, wounds our heart, or keeps us from showing our tenderness. To come out of the pose, you want to slide forward, and it's okay to, like, moan and groan a little bit, maybe cry a little bit. You come out of it and just go, it's, you don't want to say splat, you were just a frog, but you just kind of lay on the ground. And if you're feeling particularly tender, you can move around a little bit. You can wiggle, you can make sounds. They will make you feel better too. And then we're going to take our hands underneath our shoulders, and we're going to come onto our hands and knees. And we're going to do a little yang moment with just a couple cats and cows. So with your inhale, you're going to lift up your head, your heart, and your hips. And with your exhale, push the ground away. Doing a little yang, you can even push the tops of your feet and float your knees for a moment. And then let your knees drop. Inhale, lift up into cow, letting your shoulders come away from your ears. Feel a stretch in the front of your body. And with your exhale, push the ground away. Maybe float your cat, maybe don't. Feel your belly lifting up, your back is arching. And then come to a neutral spine, and we're going to come into Anahata Asana. So, or you could always be like, I have a hot asana. No. So your butt's in the air, you keep your butt over your knees, and then slide your hands forward and bring your forehead onto the ground. You might also be more comfortable bending one of your arms and using your forearm as a pillow, particularly if you have a nice, beautiful big nose. Beautiful. You want to feel that your chest is dropping towards the ground. So I love that this pose is called Anahata Asana, because Anahata, that is the heart chakra. And we get so romantic about our heart and so romantic about, well, lots of things if you're romantic. But the fact that we have the heart pose and it's like our head's down on the ground, we can't see anything, we have no perspective, and our butt's like way up in the sky, completely exposed. And we realize in a weird way that this is kind of what it's about. That we're willing to put ourselves in vulnerable situations to open up our heart. So just take a couple breaths here, making friends with the pose, feeling your chest opening up towards the ground. The time of like finding like courage, like the time now with courage is so different than it used to be. Like courage used to be, yes, sure, like be a knight, get your sword, go slay some dragons, save whatever, some damsel or knight in distress. But we know as just like our whole human being is way more sensitive to energy than it sounds like historically humans were. We're at a different age. In the same way, now the courage we need isn't one to take up our arms and show our might and dominate. We know any idiot can do that. But actually, we want the courage to open up our hearts. We want the courage to speak our truth, risking, wobbling relationships or challenging our norms. As we move from a time of where the intellect has been superior, rewarded intelligence, we're moving into a time where it's actually this capacity to notice what wisdom we come into the world with. A time where, we see it already all around us. Take any wild and crazy idea, and you can find information on it, for it or against it, whichever one you're looking for, online. Information has become so available that there's information, false, true, on everything you can imagine already. So there's nothing innovative about that. But it's an innovation to start to realize, what truths do you know without having to be told? What wisdom does your unique attention coming to this earth allow to become part of our culture? Take another full inhale, then with your exhale, let your hips come back to your heels. And just take your hands back behind you so you're coming into embryo pose. And then you're going to lift up and we're going to make our way into Sphinx or Seal. So with Sphinx, you can keep your elbows shoulder distance apart. That is the most passive place for them, and just slightly in front of your shoulders. For Seal, you stretch your arms out, and this gives you a deeper back bend, and you can kind of modify, like maybe you have a wicked flexible back, or maybe you are not so flexible today, and you can take your arms out wider. But really, sometimes a seal looks just like a sphinx. So wherever it makes sense for you, and the cool thing is, this is it's no test. You can decide something and actually change your mind, which is the ultimate integrity, right? Don't just stick to your word. Make sure you keep it truthful. I find it so mystifying. Now, some of you know that I'm studying astrology. And so I know that we have such wonderful, beautiful different placements of these forces and archetypes that the planets bring out of us, and they're put in different ways. So I know that, for instance, some people's experience of what they say, they can have something be true on one day, and then the next day it's not true for them anymore. And then they say the other thing. And, I'm a fixed sign. I'm a very kind of perfectionist in some ways, or rigid in some ways. And so for me, it's like your word means so much. And, if you change it, you have to update me. Or like if we have an agreement and like everything changed, like your communication is so key. So I know that I'm particularly sensitive to it. But what baffles me is even in our alternative communities, in our yoga studios, in our spiritual centers, people still don't come to terms with the simple thing of like, well, if you're lying, it's really hard to do spiritual work. It's really hard to heal yourself. It's really hard to improve your relationships. And just this basic tenet for me changes so much if we start to, even when we speak to ourselves, treat our word as gold. And that's really hard when we talk to ourselves inside of our head to do that. I'm just going to watch to the end of this. I'm not going to watch another episode. Or I just want one more piece of chocolate. Whatever it is, you know where your weaknesses are. I'm just showing you mine. But to start to notice, to start to be disciplined enough that even with yourself, your word means something. Is for me, this is the place where the lungs and the heart, they can't be taken away from each other. We can't say words that aren't true in our heart. And yes, I know it would be so nice if it's convenient and it's politically correct or polite that like a white lie didn't mean it's a lie. But no, we want to effort and we want to find ways to be truthful and kind on every level of our dialogue. Now, if your seal sank into a sphinx, maybe you want to re-extend to a seal for the last minute of the pose. Ish. Noticing where you can soften. Now, of course, there is a beautiful another element to this speaking and the connection between our mouth and our heart. With your inhale, lift up a little bit, and with your exhale, gently let yourself come down to the yoga mat. Bring your forehead onto the ground and just roll your hips back and forth. And then bring your hands underneath your shoulders, and we're going to lift up onto our knees. We're going to do another little yang pose. And it's nice. Like you're standing on your knees. You're like the little version of yourself. Yeah. And then bring your hands to your lower back. You want to squeeze your elbows in, and you want to let your hips go in front of your knees. Now, engage your abdominals, lift up your heart, and then drop your head back. Maybe it's appropriate for you to drop your hands down to your heels. Maybe it's not. If you're not sure, you can also tuck your toes under. And then stick out your tongue, look at your third eye, and with a whisper, roar like a lioness. So you go, beautiful. Then inhale, lift back up, and release into child's pose. So one of the other things that is a struggle for many of us is to be quiet, to actually invite silence. And inhale, roll up. And you can do that magic thing where you cross your ankles and roll over your crossed ankles. Ta-da! And here's another little magic thing. I can't totally do it because my whale's in the way. But take your hands and just start to slide your hands out and notice how you gently come onto your back. Whee! Yes. And then hug both your knees to your chest. And keep hugging your right knee as you stretch your left leg long, and get active with your left leg just to get into the pose. Stretch your leg long, pull your right knee more towards you, and then you can even shift your hips a little bit to your right. Bring your knee across your body and come into a twist here. You want your right hand lower than your shoulder, so your shoulder blade can be dropping towards the floor or lying on the floor. You can see I like to tuck my right toes behind my left knee. You may or may not like it. It helps me get more relaxed here. Now, take a full inhale, and with your exhale, just sigh it out. And just notice how much your body responds even when you just take a nice sigh. So there's something about silence. So not just silencing our own mouth, our own words, but spending time in silence. Spending some part of your day not being entertained, not listening to something educational or funny. I guess that's entertainment. But to actually do something in silence, to do many things in silence, really. So the same way that our words, even in the quietness of our interior, affect us, our words affect others. Others' words affect us. When we relate silence to the other, it invites an ability to listen to them. When we really can get quiet in ourselves. And in turn, when we are by ourselves and can get quiet, we may also find that we hear elements of our intuition, that we have space to actually notice where our own creativity can lead us in thinking, to think new thoughts, to invite new perspectives in. Because honoring the silence is another element that empowers our word. You know, this the space in between our words. When someone speaks all the time, it's really hard to listen. But it's also easy if someone is talking to you all the time, like kind of drift away, come back in, drift away. But how do words sound when someone has chosen their words and they don't say that much? But what they say can be, not always, real jewels. We are able to create so much of the mood around us, the environment around us, about with the way we use our words, with the way we use the sound of our voice even. With your next inhale, roll back to center. Hug both your knees to your chest. And then actively, you're going to stretch your right leg, really actively trying to reach your right foot away from your right hip. And then with your exhale, bring your left knee across your body. You can always kind of shift more to the outside of your right thigh, allowing the twist to be more deep. Your left hand is lower than your shoulder, palm towards the ground to help ground your left shoulder down. Take a full inhale, and with your exhale, just sigh out. When we find ourselves completely fixated on material, on stuff, on matter, it's easy to dismiss how much our word, our language, our stories build around us. You know, you've probably been around someone who, complains all the time, or is very skilled at noticing what's wrong, what doesn't work. You might even feel your energy drained from such a situation. Or, much more popular these days, if maybe you've been around someone who has clearly gotten the idea that they should always be positive. And how that too can, in its, in its superficiality, can be really kind of toxic or draining. When we teach our mouth to do something, but it's disconnected from our heart, something else happens to the words. was looking for this Hafiz poem. And I knew it was in one of my green books, but I have a bunch of green books. Notice where your attention goes. What do you want to create with your words? I didn't find the Hafiz poem that I was thinking about, so instead, what kept jumping out from my book for us is totally of a different mood. It's by the poet E. E. Cummings. And the way he uses words is yet another beautiful exploration in imagination and creativity. I will wade out till my thighs are steeped in burning flowers. I will take the sun in my mouth and leap into the ripe air, alive, with closed eyes to dash against darkness in the sleeping curves of my body, shall enter fingers of smooth mastery. With chasteness of sea girls will I complete the mystery of my flesh. I will rise after 1,000 years, lipping flowers, and set my teeth in the silver of the moon. And then with your next inhale, come back to center. And we're just going to do one last little stretch before our Shavasana. And you want to, after rolling around a little bit, stretch your legs long and take your right heel to the right corner of your yoga mat. And then just hook your left heel to the other side. To the other side. Hook your left heel over your right ankle. Now stretch your arms over your head and pull your left arm to your right. So you feel a stretch all along the side body here. And we're not quite doing it young, but we're just doing a couple breaths. And I'm going to read to you this beautiful poem one more time. For me, I love that what made me read it really was this idea of I will take the sun in my mouth. The sun is like our heart. Our mouth is where our lungs express. I will wade out till my thighs are steeped in burning flowers. I will take the sun in my mouth and leap into the ripe air, alive, with closed eyes, to dash against darkness. In the sleeping curves of my body shall enter fingers of smooth mastery, with chasteness of sea girls. Will it complete the mystery of my flesh? I will rise, after 1,000 years, lipping flowers, and set my teeth in the silver of the moon. And then come back to center. It wouldn't just be weird if we didn't do the other side. So take your left heel to the outside of your left corner of your yoga mat. Hook your right heel over your left ankle. Stretch your arms and take your right arm and stretch your right arm to the left. Taking a full deep breaths. May you find the bravery to use the words that create the world that you want to be in. And then bring yourself back to center. Stretch your body long, maybe cover yourself in a blanket. Close your eyes. And while your body is still, relaxed, allow your attention to stay in the room you're in your body, on your yoga mat for Shavasana. With your next inhale, invite your breath to the edges of your body. Wiggle your fingers and your toes, maybe smile, maybe wiggle your nose. And then stretch your arms up over your head with your next inhale. Feel your beautiful long body. Woo! And then curl into a ball with your exhale, rolling onto your side, just pausing for a moment, maybe a full breath, feeling the vibrancy and vitality. And then help yourself up into a comfortable seated position. Allow your hands to meet at heart center. Close your eyes and maybe lift up the person that you dedicated your class to. Imagine them radiant, healthy, smiling. And let's close with one Om. Let's empty our breath first and take an inhale together. Bring your prayer hands to your third eye. Invite the divine light. And as we bow forward, together we say, Namaste. And so much love. Make some noise. Woo! Yeah.